this country's never been in the situation where a prime minister doesn't win their local constituency election. What would happen if you were to win in such a scenario while Boris Johnson remains leader of the Conservative Party?
Thank you for having me, Maajid. I think one of the extraordinary things about our campaign in Uxbridge and South Ruislip is that if there is any single seat in this election that can say that they can dramatically change the course of this country and the future of this country, it's Uxbridge and South Ruislip. So what we're aiming to do is exactly as you say, become the first seat in British democracy history to unseat a sitting prime minister. And essentially what that would mean is, if there is one way to guarantee that Boris Johnson will not be Prime Minister, will not be an MP, and will not be involved in the future of politics in this country, that's by beating him here in Uxbridge and South Ruislip. So, in answer to your question, essentially what it would mean is Boris Johnson, unless he gets moved to the House of Lords, which would be quite unlikely given the fact that he would have lost his seat, he would no longer be able to be Prime Minister of this country, even if the Conservative Party got a majority.
And sorry, repeat, why would you say that they wouldn't just appoint him to the House of Lords? What's the argument there?
Because imagine how dramatically humiliating it would be for a Prime Minister to lose their own seat. I just think it would be quite unlikely. They may do it. Never put anything past the Conservative Party. But the one thing that is clear for us here in Uxbridge and South Ruislip is that every door we knock on every part of the campaign is historic, because it is the smallest majority a Prime Minister's had, I think, in 100 years. It would be the first time in British democracy history, and it would be the single seat to change the very future of the country. And that's why so many people are excited about the campaign.
The current majority he has in the seat you're contending is 5,034, which is not really that much, right? And 5%. It's because Theresa May called this disastrous election in 2017. What are the polls indicating at the moment about your chances of beating the Prime Minister in Uxbridge and South Ruislip?
The polls that we're seeing is very, very consistent to that. We only need a 5% swing in Uxbridge and South Ruislip to win the seat. The polls are all showing a two-horse race between myself and Boris. Obviously, when you include the Brexit Party, as you put in the beginning of the segment, things become clear, and we actually go into the lead when the Brexit Party are involved. But even if the Brexit Party isn't, in the polling that we have, that's just a head-to-head race between Boris and myself. It's all or has been within the margin of error for us to win. So a good 6 weeks, 40-something days of the campaign, it is absolutely possible that the Labour Party can take this seat and unseat Boris Johnson.
Just to reinforce the point you've made, the Lib Dems in your seat only got in 2017 fewer than 2,000 votes, and the Greens got fewer than, or roughly around 1,000 votes.
Yeah, both the Liberal Democrats and the Greens lost their deposit here, which is the £500 you have to pay to be a candidate.
So it's pretty much a straightforward Tory-Labour marginal. The Brexit Party have then jumped into that, entered the equation with Nikki Page, who is a former Tory herself, and therefore runs a strong chance of stealing some votes from the Conservatives in that seat. And so considering all of this, I was surprised when I looked at this, you genuinely have a chance of beating the Prime Minister.
Absolutely. And this is the thing. I mean, it for me, it's not just imagine that moment. Imagine waking up, it's 2, 3 a.m. or whether you've been up all night and the returning officer reads out that Uxbridge and South Ruislip has unseated a Prime Minister. And that is why I think, just this morning we've been out campaigning. We had near enough 100 people from all across the country come and knock on our doors because they know that every vote that goes into that ballot box is potentially so historic and such a dramatic change for this country. And I know candidates can be quite optimistic and exaggerate what impacts things make, but I think it's no exaggeration to say that this single seat can decide and change the path that we're on, and that is why it's so exciting. And what I try and do on the campaign is to say, look, we're not just unseating Boris Johnson. Yes, we're getting rid of what I think is the worst Prime Minister, certainly in my lifetime, and 5 more years of that is probably the most dangerous thing that I can think of. But also it's the positivity, the transformative impacts that would have, the earthquake it would send Westminster if someone like myself, a young working-class lad, can unseat a Boris Johnson, can unseat a Prime Minister. That's quite exciting and something everyone can get behind.
You used the word young, Ali. What's your age?
I'm 25.
Oh, it is young, isn't it? Wow.
Someone on the door just today told me nothing counts until you're 29, but I think this one will.
Yeah. Now, considering your age as well, especially, what I'm about to ask you next, I'm mindful of. Until the age of 28, was involved in ideas that I now myself also thoroughly reject. So I don't want to, I don't want to ambush you, Ali. So, I want to be fair in this conversation, only because I'm also aware of the fact that I spent the last 1.5 hours criticising some stuff about the Labour Party too. So I do want to be fair with you. I'm going to give you this entire segment until we go to the ad break, so that you feel like you've had your say. Considering your age, and I say this with the caveat that I, as I say, am deeply regretful of things I said at your age, and apologise for till this day. You have made some remarks that you've apologised for. Would you like the opportunity to talk about those?
Yeah, absolutely. Look, Maajid, and I appreciate the way that you've introduced it. I made some remarks that I'm deeply embarrassed by and have unreservedly apologised for on every platform and will continue to do so. I think it's fair for you to ask, and I think it's fair for me to answer. One of the things that I try and do is apologise, but also grow and take every action necessary from me to rebuild trust. And so, from my perspective, I've tried to be open and honest and learn. One of the things I try and tell our residents here is, what marks me out here is, unlike Boris Johnson, I think, I understand what it's like to live like most people, and I have made my mistakes. The test of character for me, as you say, is whether you can not only apologise but take positive actions in rebuilding trust. Yeah.
So Ali, can you just, for our listeners, because it's directly related to everything I've been talking about for the last 1.5 hours. Can you explain in your words, because I don't want to put words in your mouth. So if you explain in your words what the allegations were, what you said, and what you apologised for, I hope the reason I'm asking you is, Ali, sorry to just very quickly, I hope other Labour listeners take heed from your words. So if you explain what was said by you and what you apologised for.
Yeah, so I tweeted a number of things that were anti-Semitic when I was between the age of 16, 17, around that age. Everything from tropes and jokes that were deeply inappropriate, anti-Semitic and wrong. What I have been able to do since then, as well as apologise and reach out, sit down with the Jewish colleagues and friends. I was fortunate enough and really blessed to be taken to Auschwitz and Birkenau, and to try and to gain a broader understanding of what impacts anti-Semitism has. So one thing that I would say personally and advise all our colleagues is we have to build a Labour Party that not only roots out anti-Semitism from our party, roots it out from all of society as a whole. And as you said in the opening, these were mistakes that I've made, but I seriously think the test of character is being able to reach out and apologise and be open and honest.
And talk to us about the experience when you went to. You're a young, I think, Iranian origin Brit. And you've just said, as I, by the way, just to make you feel comfortable with this, I'm not trying to ambush you. I have been...
No, you're completely fair, I understand.
I was on the Jewish News Awards ceremony where I was rewarded for challenging anti-Semitism, and my opening remark was, I used to be an anti-Semite. So I'm fully with you about the fact that we have things in our past that we can be regretful for. The fact is, the most important thing is to admit them and encourage our colleagues to admit them, and rather than deny them. So when you went to Auschwitz, talk to me about what it did as a Muslim raised in this country who has said anti-Semitic things. You go to Auschwitz. How does that change you? What was your experience?
Well, what it shows you is, I think, first of all, it is... they told us on the plane that there is really, once you go and you see the impacts, it almost becomes a before and after in your life. It really changes your worldview, and you get to see the horrors of when anti-Semitism goes unchallenged, where it leads. But also, it made me start to think, I think also what we need to do above apology is actually look at some of the things that ways in which we can have a serious impact. So I thought one of the things that I've tried to say quite clearly is there are a lot of things that go unchallenged within our schools and our colleges, languages that, when I look back on, my biggest regret is me, my friends and colleagues not challenging, tropes and anti-Semitic languages and conspiracy theories and things like that. And one thing I'm trying to do is work with local colleges and schools to challenge that. One of the other examples is things around homophobia. How often did we describe things in homophobic ways, and in all, in terms of all minorities, the kind of languages that's used. So that experience really, really allowed me. First of all, it's personally moving, and kind of completely changed my worldview. But also, it's about how can we challenge these things, and how can I be part of the solution within wider society to root this real nasty racism out of our society.
And Ali, thank you for that. I again emphasise that I understand exactly where you're coming from with regards to that kind of apology and experience, because I went to Yad Vashem in Tel Aviv and I had a similar experience to yours when you went to Auschwitz. I used to be an anti-Semite. I used to support destroying the state of Israel. I went to visit Yad Vashem, and it really, it's a culmination, of course. These things don't just happen. There's no light bulb moment. It was a culmination of years of conversation, of friendships built with fellow members of our Jewish community, till the point where I realised that I was becoming the very thing that I claimed to be against, which was a bigot. And so I had to course correct. So thank you for that. I will just ask a couple of more questions on that, though, just for clarification, so that the other Labour Party members can hear you as well. I've got no problem. My issue is not criticising Israel. So just to be very clear, I know that you will have views critical of Netanyahu. I share those views with you, and I think that the current Israeli policy under Netanyahu, and I think, he's just lost an election anyway, but, what was going on under Netanyahu was abysmal. There are some remarks specifically that you made about armed resistance, though, against Israel. And also, I wanted to get your take on Hezbollah because of Corbyn's remarks. So could you address those 2 points?
Yeah, look, I don't in any way support violence as a solution to the conflict. I think, and I try and say with all conflict, it ends. They almost always end in political dialogue. Often there is a lot of bloodshed unnecessarily along the way. So I don't in any way.
So you disassociate with any previous allegations of armed conflict being?
Yes, absolutely. Okay. But also around Hezbollah. I mean, you mentioned I myself see myself as British first and foremost. But in terms of Hezbollah, I would have nothing to do and see them in no way as part of any solutions to any.
Fantastic. Ali, I'm going to confess something to you, and my producers here know it. When we first considered bringing you on today, I was very, very sceptical and worried because of the past remarks. But I'm really happy that we've had this conversation, because actually I think hearing it from you, I think, can do a ton of good in this country for other Labour members and other Momentum supporters, because you've been through that experience. You've made those mistakes that I am very, very worried that other Labour Party members are making. And you could be somebody that could, perhaps they'd listen to you in a way that they may not listen to somebody like me who's not a Labour Party candidate.
Appreciate it. Thank you, Maajid.
Well, Ali, I'll tell you what, we'll be interested in speaking to you again as this election campaign unfolds to see how you're doing. So we'd love to have you back on.
Well,
and I hope this becomes the beginning of a conversation between us two.
South Ruislip, there's serious change brewing. So
all right.
I hope to talk to you on December 13th as the first person to unseat a sitting Prime Minister.
Well, we'll do it before that. We'll keep getting updates from you as the election comes closer, because I just think this should be the beginning of a dialogue in the national interest between somebody that doesn't vote Labour and somebody like you that is running as a candidate. So thank you, Ali, for calling in. We're late for the break, but I think, as you will probably agree, that was a really important call by a Labour parliamentary candidate who is running against Boris Johnson in Uxbridge and South Ruislip and has a genuine chance of unseating, and has learned the lessons, the hard and tough lessons of the institutional anti-Semitism that I'm complaining exists in the Labour Party, and has admitted to that and has apologised for it. And I think that deserves respect. So Ali Milani has gained my respect today, at least, and I hope others follow in his footsteps.